Okay, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, has just reacted saying Kemi Badenoch will make no difference as leader of the Conservative Party. They have broken the trust of the people and the brand is broken. Let's listen to what he's just had to say.
So, as projected and indeed delivered, Kemi Badenoch is the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition, which means the Conservative Party have turned their backs on the idea of leaving the ECHR because that's what Jenrick stood for. What you're going to get with Kemi Badenoch is more of the same. Pretty much exactly the same as the last 14 years. I've got to tell you, one thing they don't understand, it isn't about the individuals. The Conservative brand is broken.
The time has come to tell the truth, to stand up for our principles, to plan for our future, to reset our politics and our thinking, and to give our party and our country the new start that they deserve. It is time to get down to business. It is time to renew. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Kemi Badenoch gets a standing ovation after being announced the new leader of the Conservative Party. We'll just stay on these shots as she leaves the stage. But Charlie Sansom, I thought that was a very muted speech. No policy proposals, no suggestion as to how she's going to get people like you back. And we do have to remember that Kemi Badenoch is Michael Gove's stooge, is the continuation candidate. And I don't think this is good news for the Tories. I really don't.
No, it's not good news at all. Look, like I said before the announcement was made, the idiot boomer Tory voters are going to be clapping like seals because they've got their based black mummy. But what does it change? What does it actually change? You know, at the end of the day, right, I've heard nothing from her. I've heard lots from Robert Jenrick, and I think that, you know, you, Dan, and Ben will agree with me, as we've already kind of touched on already, is that Jenrick has sounded more like Nigel Farage than Nigel Farage has throughout this campaign and since he was elected to Parliament. But the problem that I've got, that I'm going to disagree with you both on, is that I don't think this is an opportunity for Nigel Farage at all. Because if he goes back on what he said already, does that not make him sound duplicitous? Because he's ruled out mass deportation. He's not really big on some of the things that the British public are concerned about anymore. He used to be, but now that he's got a seat in the chamber, it seems like he's pulled back a little bit and let Robert Jenrick take the lead. I don't get it. I'm confused about.
Charlie, I completely agree with you. The point I was making was the pressure is off Nigel Farage. The pressure is off because he's not going. There won't be a. You know, with Jenrick at the dispatch box, the contrast with Nigel's new kind of muted form of nationism would be stark. But with Kemi there, Nigel will still appear to be the outstanding nationalist. Are you with me?
Yeah, I see you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I apologise. You actually made a
fantastic.
Sorry,
she poses no threat to Nigel in the way that Robert did. Yeah.
Yeah, I misunderstood you. I apologise.
The thing is, though, there is a big opportunity for Farage with this. I think Jenrick was Farage's worst nightmare because he didn't really have an answer to the fact that Jenrick was saying, yes, we're going to go ahead with mass deportations, Ben. Whereas Kemi, we're going to get weasel words, vague talk. Maybe we leave the ECHR, but we probably don't need to. I believe this is a massive boost for Reform UK today because I have to be honest with you, while I agree with Kemi Badenoch on culture war issues, while I think she's incredibly sound, for example, on the rights of women, that's where it ends. I don't trust her. When she had a chance, actually in the cabinet, Ben, to remove EU legislation in the bonfire, she didn't do it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely. One could make the same criticism of Robert Jenrick, of course, who was a Cameroonian.
He resigned.
Yeah, but he voted Remain. He voted for every one of Theresa May's withdrawal agreements. You know, he was very happy with lockdowns, and even though he broke some of them himself, I think. You know, so I was quite skeptical, and I remain skeptical of Robert Jenrick. His rhetoric, however, is remarkable. And so his rhetoric would have taken the fight to Nigel because Nigel would have had to defend his position on saying that he was against mass deportations, that he didn't mind mass immigration. That's effectively what Nigel said, which was kind of weird. He didn't mind the rapid rate at which the demography in this country was changing. So I think there are two issues. Can I just step back for a second? There are two issues here. There's the party political issue, and I think this is a good day for reform because the pressure will be off Nigel. Then is this a good day for the country? Well, that remains to be seen. And the reason I say it remains to be seen is there is a glimmer of hope. One always holds out hope that Kemi may put her arm across Charlie's shoulder and say, Charlie, come back to the party, and get people like Charlie back into the party and do what she's kind of indicated, which is get her principles sorted out, recognize that actually she's got to reach out not to the Liberal Democrat voting faction of the Conservative Party. She's got to reach out to the 4 million people who just sat on their sofas and said, we're not voting because we're despondent and fed up with all of you and a pox on your houses. And she can only tap into those people if she gets people like Charlie back in the party. And if she gets people like Charlie in the party, ejects Michael Gove's ideology, there may be a chance that the Conservative Party will save itself. But if people like Charlie, sorry, Charlie, I'm using you as an example, but if people like Charlie are not drawn back into the party, this is the end of the Conservative Party. They've already taken a drubbing of historical magnitude, and they will take another drubbing if they pivot towards the Liberal Democrat vote. They will be done. And that'll be a bad day for the country, in a sense, because it will mean reform will have no pressure on it to do what it needs to do. I want reform and the Conservatives to be competing for the nationalist agenda. I want them all to have to outdo each other to reach the voters. And now there's potentially they just step back.
Indeed. And that was why I was so desperate for Robert Jenrick, because I think there was a realistic opportunity for him to move the Overton window, for him to make Nigel Farage realise actually he can speak in the same way that, for example, Donald Trump speaks about mass deportation. So, Charlie, given Ben has made you the centre of whether the Conservative Party can survive, what does Kemi Badenoch have to do, Charlie, to get you back?
She needs to sound less like Kemi Badenoch, unfortunately. I mean, I don't want to be too rude, but I'm very cynical about the Conservative Party and their prospects. I thought Robert Jenrick stood the best chance because he was speaking the right language. Do I think that Robert Jenrick would have followed through? Probably not, because there's far too many One Nation Tories inside the Conservative Party that would put a block on all of these radical ideas that he has. And when I say radical, I mean radical from their perspective. I actually think they're quite common sense. I want to read out something just very quickly from a friend of mine. His name's Harrison Pitt. He works alongside Peter Wootton at the New Culture Forum. And he wrote, Badenoch identifies more with prospective immigrants than with the consistently expressed desires of the English people. Now, I would say that is the issue here, is that people will look at the next 4 or 5 years, our country will deteriorate even further under open-door immigration and unvetted immigration. And then when it comes to the next election, people are going to say, well, who do I vote for now? Because I don't really want to vote in a way which is sympathetic towards the people coming over here. And I think that if Robert Jenrick has lost this and Nigel Farage doesn't really have a firm grip on where he wants to take Reform UK, we might get another 5 years of Labour, which will be, where you'll see a lot of people leave the country.
Well, the other issue with Kemi Badenoch is about whether she really does reject identity politics. Now, what is so refreshing about this broadcast that we're hosting today is, have you noticed that not one of us has spoken about the fact that this is the first black woman to lead the Conservative Party? But I can guarantee you that will be the domination of the rhetoric across the mainstream media all around the world for the next few days, or at least the next few hours, because to be honest, that's probably all the Conservatives deserve in this news cycle. But Connor Tomlinson, who's a regular on the show and who a lot of you will know, has made the point quite forcefully that when Kemi Badenoch was so revoltingly challenged by David Tennant, do you remember that? The Doctor Who actor who said, oh, I just want Kemi Badenoch off the face of the earth, basically, rather than actually argue with him over policy and the fact that he had made that comment about a Conservative, What she did, Ben Habib, was immediately say how terrible that you've made that comment about a black woman. And so I guess the argument is that when it suits her, Kemi Badenoch will lead in to identity politics. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
Well, if she does, walk the walk of identity politics, it would be desperately bad for the country. One of the biggest missteps we've made as a country is promoting diversity for diversity's sake. And we've parked the importance of cultural integration. We've parked what it means to be British. And equally importantly, we've parked meritocracy in the pursuit of diversity. And whenever you invoke identity politics, you're basically saying, I've lost all my other arguments. Now just please give me the benefit of the doubt because I happen to be black, or in my case, brown. In Charlie's case, I'm sorry, Charlie, you're white, so you get no breaks, in identity politics. All the breaks come, my way and Kemi's way. It's a terrible way to govern. Who cares what color you are? Who cares what nationality your great-grandparents were or what your sexual disposition is? Who cares? The question when you're in office is, what are you going to do for this country? How are you going to protect this country? How are you going to promote this country? How are you going to make this country a safer place to live? How are you going to make this a more prosperous country? How are you going to settle society? These are the questions to which we all want answers, and none of them lie in the fact that she happens to be a black woman.
Charlie?
I would agree. I think that when people lean on identity politics, they do have no arguments left. I think that perhaps in that moment with David Tennant, she was probably playing politics herself, because obviously the left like to use it a lot and she's used it in reverse, although I don't agree with it. To go back to what you said earlier on about this will be the headline and because she's a black woman and she's the first black woman. I mean, like you said, we don't care. But what I will find interesting, and I predict this, is that she'll get criticised more because she's a black woman from the left and saying that she is a sellout, which I've seen happen to her in the past. I've seen it happen to Priti Patel in the past. I've seen it happen online with people criticising different people in the political commentary world and journalism world because they don't have the right colour skin for their prescribed politics. And I think that needs to change. And maybe that will be a positive. Maybe she can change that because she will be at the forefront of British politics for the next little while, I suppose. And, maybe she can change that. That would be one positive. So.
Okay, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, has just reacted, saying Kemi Badenoch will make no difference as leader of the Conservative Party. They have broken the trust of the people and the brand is broken. Let's listen to what he's just had to say.
So, as projected and indeed delivered, Kemi Badenoch is the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition, which means the Conservative Party have turned their backs on the idea of leaving the ECHR because that's what Jenrick stood for. What you're going to get with Kemi Badenoch is more of the same. Pretty much exactly the same as the last 14 years. I've got to tell you, one thing they don't understand, it isn't about the individuals, the Conservative brand is broken.
Ben Habib, your reaction to Nigel?
Couldn't hear all of what Nigel said, but I heard him saying that they turned their back effectively on being Conservative, I think was the point he was making. And I think it's a bit early to judge. I think in all probability he's right, but I think it's just a bit early to judge because Kemi has, as you identified at the opening of the show, Dan, actually held her cards very close to her chest. She's talked about principles, not policies. And in doing so, she hasn't actually revealed where she is. But I think she will now reveal herself pretty quickly. If we see a shadow cabinet comprising James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat, and others of that disposition, well, we know this is not a Conservative Party that's going to be Conservative in the way that we would wish it to be. If she puts in Suella Braverman into a key position, Robert Jenrick into a key position, and if there is any other member of the Tory parliamentary party that would represent that kind of view, and she puts them in good positions, well, then we might see a slightly different outcome.
Breaking right now, Keir Starmer has just reacted. If we come up to his post on X, surprise, surprise, guess what he has referred to. Congratulations, Kemi Badenoch, on becoming the Conservative Party's new leader. The first black leader of a Westminster party is a proud moment for our country. I look forward to working with you and your party in the interests of the British people. So, do you agree that it is a proud moment for the country? Because I would argue, Ben Habib, that the fact that Rishi Sunak was the first Asian Prime Minister of the country was actually completely irrelevant, given he did a terrible job. But as I suggested, identity politics seems to dominate in this day and age when it comes to the political establishment.
But I mean, that's Starmer all over, isn't it? Starmer is imbued with that identity politics, transgender ideology, taking the knee to BLM, not being able to identify what a woman is. You know, I tweeted the other day, I had good traction, actually. I said, if misinformation was the bar at which criminality could be determined, you know, Starmer should be in jail because he misdescribes women as having penises. So this is, you know, we've got a prime minister who is literally, in my book, a lunatic.
And David Lammy says that, our foreign secretary says that a man can grow a cervix.
I know. I mean, this is end of civilization stuff, Dan. You know, when you've got people governing you who think that men can grow a cervix, they'll write about this in 1,000 years' time, and they'll say that was really the last nail in the great British Empire. You know, they lost the ability to define the difference between men and women.
Totally. What's your reaction, Charlie, to Keir Starmer making this an issue of race? Obviously, quite ironic, isn't it? Given that, let's just remind ourselves, it's the Labour Party that remains the only party that has never had a female leader and never had an ethnic minority leader. All white men. Not that I think that's a bad thing, Charlie, but it's just very ironic that they seem to be the ones that always want to talk about this.
No, I totally agree. And if we're talking about growing things bigger, it wouldn't be a cervix. But what I would say, but when it comes to the colour of somebody's skin, I find this quite insulting to people who use that as a barometer for access to jobs and everything else. Why can't you just be there through merit? You know, there's plenty of countries around the world with non-white leaders that are in disarray. I won't name them through fear of insulting them, but you know, you can't just say that because she's a black woman that she's going to do a good job. She might be awful. Then what does that mean? That black people are now bad at politics? That they can't lead political parties? You know, you can't have that line moving forward because it doesn't add up. I think that it's ironic that Keir Starmer has said this, though, because, you know, it will be his Labour backbenchers that will be calling her not quite black enough when she does something wrong.
Alison Pearson, who actually backed Kemi Badenoch in this race. I'm very good friends with Alison Pearson, but I did say this was a decision I disagreed with you on. But she has just made the identity politics point in a way that I think is probably palatable to us. So if we look at her X, diversity-obsessed Labour, women leaders 0, Conservatives 4. Diversity Labour, black ethnic minority leaders 0, Conservative 2. Black women leaders, Labour 0, Conservatives, and she's put the fire emotion, the heart emotion, a party emotion, a champagne emotion, a clapping emotion, making history fabulous, Kemi Badenoch. As I say, Ben Habib, personally, it's not what I care about. I reject all identity politics. I think what's very interesting, though, is what this does show you is how the Conservative establishment believe that the best way they can take the fight to Labour on woke issues is by having a black female leader, because it's almost as if it makes her impossible to criticise.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a protected status. I mean, it's the regulatory protected status that we afford everyone from an ethnic minority religious belief. You know, Islamophobia, the word, is designed to protect the religion of Islam. It's a protected status. It's in itself identity politics. The same with the transgender ideology. All of it, all of these protected statuses that we've created, the dumbing down of meritocracy, as Charlie said. It's frankly the dumbing down of society, because, you know, if that's all that is required in order to determine whether or not people should get a job and be promoted, well, we're done for as a country.
Well, unless you happen to be
get back.
Yes, I totally agree. But the irony is, unless you happen to be on the right, because if you're on the right and you're Suella Braverman and you're Priti Patel, actually no one seems to give a damn that you're a female ethnic minority. And I think Kemi will face a lot of that, because I have to show you the hysterical left-wing reaction, which is already coming through. Ta-da! Narinder Kaur, like clockwork, writes, the new leader of the Conservative Party. The only difference between her and Jenrick is that he wore his unconscious bias like a badge of honour. Kemi, this is offensive, folks, Kemi is just a blackface puppet being used to push hateful rhetoric. I will not be gaslit like I was with Sunak with first brown black leader. It's fake and it's legitimising racism through the back door. So, Ben Habib, the irony there is, even though I think it's completely despicable that Narinder has just described Kemi as a blackface puppet, probably it's the first time I agree with Narinder saying, let's just not make Kemi's race the issue.
Well, that's because she's got problems with what Kemi says from time to time. That's just Narinder using identity politics to rubbish Kemi. I mean, I'm going to tell a little tale out of school, if you like. I was at the Oxford Union the other day, and before you debate at the Oxford Union, they have what's called the House's business. And the House business took place. It was an extremely acrimonious affair where various members of the union were called to the dispatch boxes and were accusing each other of bad practice. And all of the bad practice that I could make out, that all the accusations were founded on identity politics. This was the Oxford Union. The president had to give up his chair, come down and address answers from the floor because he had accused someone apparently of someone had been accused of being a, inverted commas, coconut. Someone had taken a photograph of a Muslim woman at a gate without her permission. And then a Chinese guy came, a South Asian guy, and he was upset about the way he'd been treated because his name had been misspelt. I mean, this was the preeminent educational establishment in the country, was absolutely consumed by identity politics. We should be looking to places like Oxford to produce the next generation of leaders. We're not going to get them if this is what all their ideology is rooted in. We've got to get away from it. We just got to ditch all this nonsense DEI rubbish and remember, we're all equal. We all have one vote. We're all British citizens, and it's meritocracy that should drive the agenda.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I don't give a damn about Kemi's colour or gender, sex. I don't give a damn. I literally don't even see it. What I give a damn about is that she's rejected leaving the ECHR, she's rejected mass deportations, she's rejected a deal with Nigel Farage. I actually think this is going to be a disaster. Hey, something funny, though, has just been caught from Sly News. I want to show you this moment where you can see Robert Jenrick's wife in the background as the result is announced, and she stops clapping. And let's just have a watch now. It's very, very funny. So you'll see there she is clapping along. She stops, clearly unhappy. There's no love lost there, is she? As she realises, oh, goodness me, I should still be clapping. Let's keep going. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Okay, so where to next for the Conservative Party? What do they have to do now, Ben Habib?
Well, she's got to get her shadow cabinet. And I think that's going to be revealing in itself. If it includes, as I say, Robert Jenrick, Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, that'll be a good sign, I think.
I'm not hopeful of that.
No. Well, then, I mean, if it's James Cleverly and Tobias Tugendhat and people of their hue,
done.
Then we know it's another Liberal Democrat Conservative leadership, and we're done for.
Charlie, what do they have to do now?
Well, they've kind of put the final nail in their coffin for me, I think, because if she believes in not leaving the ECHR, I mean, that's one of the key fundamental things about what Conservatives want now. They don't want to be overindulged with people from other countries that don't want to partake in our society. And I think that she's just opened the door to that, really. I mean, it's more attractive that she's there because I think that she's not going to be willing to do anything. And like I've said to you many times, Dan, I believe that the Conservatives are finished. They'll be around for a while still, but I believe that as an electoral force, they are finished. But that doesn't mean that there's room for someone to come through the middle. I'm not entirely convinced by reform either, unfortunately, and I should be. You know, naturally, my home should be in Reform. It used to be in UKIP when they were a force back in the mid 2010s, and I really like what they stood for back then. I don't know why people are afraid to go back to those kinds of values really in politics nowadays. I don't think it's that controversial to say the United Kingdom is for the British.
Isn't the fundamental issue, Ben Habib, that even though they're a nasty bunch, the left on the whole is united within Labour? Okay, fine. Diane Abbott hates Starmer. Bell, Ribeiro, Abbey can't stand Rachel Reeves. But they are in the same party because they understand that they want power. What you have is a real splintering of the right. And of course, even within Reform UK, we've seen examples of that over the past week. Howard Cox appeared on Outspoken earlier in the week and made it clear that he was very angry with the fact that Richard Tice had described Tommy Robinson supporters at the Uniting the Kingdom march as that lot. And he said that Nigel Farage had been in touch with him personally to say that Tice went too far. So isn't the big challenge for the right to somehow unite?
So I'm reluctant to use the word right in order to describe our grouping of people, because
I think you're true.
I just think we are nation. We believe in the United Kingdom. And I don't think inherently that is a right-wing belief. The lunatics like Starmer, who can't identify what a woman is, would like to cast us as right-wing, because then they can, you know, with a little nudging, get us down the slippery rope to being far-right. And if they can then categorize us as far-right, they discredit us, and that's the end of the debate. And so I'm reluctant to give ground on the definition. Sorry to be pedantic on that point, but I think it's important.
I think it's important.
I see myself as a nationalist and a patriot, a believer in the United Kingdom. And that is how I frame all my thinking around policies. And I would have hoped that's how Reform UK would form all its thinking.
Do you agree, Charlie?
I think that...
And I mean, I'm talking to Nigel at midnight.
Apologies, there was a breakup there.
Oh, sorry, Ben. Just continue. You were saying that you were speaking to Nigel Farage at midnight.
No, I wasn't. No, I think Howard said he was speaking. This is just a bit of a joke, but you know, Howard said he'd been speaking to Nigel at midnight, and I was thinking to myself, if I was speaking to anyone at midnight, she'd have to be very beautiful, and I wouldn't be talking about politics.
We should take over the country ourselves. I think we've got the banter and the logic. I think we can do it.
You do, banter and logic. Well, look, thank you so much, Charlie Sansom, Ben Habib, former deputy leader of Reform UK. Thank you for taking us through what could end up being a historically bad decision for the Conservative Party, electing Kemi Badenoch over Robert Jenrick. Absolute pleasure to have you both here. And I'm just going to look in now at some of what you are saying on YouTube. John Knox writes, if you are voting based on ages, skin colour, appearance, gender, good luck with that. You will not get good results. Very Virgo says, well, that's lost my Tory vote, back to Reform. And I think quite a lot of people are going to feel the same way about that. Sally Cushing says, why waste airtime on Narinda? What I was trying to do is make the point about that when you have a right-wing person who ticks all of the identity boxes, all of a sudden the left doesn't give a damn about identity politics. Andrea Hayes says we need a political party with Christian beliefs. Of course, that is what UKIP have said they're going to do, and UKIP have made the point that they will try and allow Tommy Robinson supporters and the likes of Katie Hopkins to enter the party. Tip Top says Tory traitors moving to Reform. Marky says Britain is done, people, done. Mark Harrison says of Kemi, sounds like Kamala Harris doesn't answer the question, and she certainly never does answer the question. Lynn Blackburn says, why are they talking about skin colour? Isn't it more about what she can do for her country? I don't care what she looks like. I just want someone to sort out the country. Yes, exactly. But the thing is, when it comes to Keir Starmer, he hates everything that Kemi Badenoch stands for so significantly. So I guess the only thing that he felt palatable to actually raise was her skin colour. So you've got so much good feedback coming in. This was new for us today. I want you to be able to be with Outspoken when there are big breaking news events, so you don't have to tune in to the propaganda that you get from the British Bashing Corporation, Woke ITV, Sly News, and I hate to say it, even GB News. So thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for your company today. And the exciting news is that I'm back Monday, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And guess what? David Starkey with me for the entire show. So that is going to be very, very exciting. And we will, of course, react to the Southport cover-up, his views on the Conservative leadership campaign, the American election, and, of course, the British royal family, which is one of his specialty areas. We've also got some big news about www.outspoken.live. Please do sign up. You can support us at Outspoken for just £5 a month, and you get half an hour of exclusive content in the uncancelled after show every single day. So thank you very much for your company on this Saturday morning as Kemi Badenoch beats Robert Jenrick in a tight vote to become leader of the Conservative Party in a decision that I think will end up being historically bad for the most successful political party in history. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.